Hey everybody, and Tony here with my review of Mozart's Die Zauberflöte with once again conductor Dominic Limburg, which I saw at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. This marks the 5th overall time I saw this production by Günther Kremer of Mozart's Die Zauberflöte at the Deutsche Oper Berlin because I was really excited to see and hear Diana Schnürpel as the Queen of the Night. And this lyric coloratura soprano who has the potential to grow into a full-fledged dramatic coloratura soprano managed to knock me as the viewer out of the park. I first heard her on YouTube singing Der Hölle Rache while she was playing the piano, and she was able to demonstrate her skills as an exquisite musician. Equally exquisite was her choice of repertoire, from the soprano leggero roles like Rosina from Il Barbiere di Siviglia to one of her trademark roles being the Queen of the Night to even more dramatic coloratura soprano roles like Maria Stuarda. Her repertoire was wide-ranging. The promise that she had in the material that she does was fascinating, and I was totally hooked with what was going to happen tonight when I saw and heard her as the Queen of the Night. And she did not disappoint me at all. She in fact excited me, and she was thoroughly consistent with her technique, thoroughly consistent with her portrayal as this queen, and thoroughly exceptional in everything that she accomplished as the Queen of the Night. In terms of her technique, she was able to have great coordination of both head voice and chest voice, especially in Der Hölle Rache, and her high notes were ringing and clear. They were able to be heard all throughout the theater, and she had a pretty strong start in O Zitre nicht and a much stronger performance in Der Hölle Rache, also going all out in Nur Stille, Stille, thus showing great consistency and great musicianship all the way through. And the promise that she has as a lyric coloratura soprano growing into a dramatic coloratura soprano is also there. Her timbre was quite steely and had that cold steel going through it. And she was able to not only hit those high notes with a piercing timbre, but also do so with clarity and a lot of pure emotional abandon. Yes, Diana Schnürpel's voice may not be as voluminous, wide-ranging, let alone huge like Serafima di Neva, Ray Woodland, Colette Laurent, Christina Deutecom, Margareta Hallen, Christiane Eda-Pierre, and Eda Moser. And lest I forget about Silvia Gesti, Tatiana Sterling, Karin Ott, Sally Wolf, and Kathleen Casello, who were all able to give the Queen of the Night her trademark rage, nobility, and fury, specifically where Christina Deutecom and Eda Moser are concerned. Nevertheless, Diana Schnürpel was technically precise. She was able to throw herself into the Queen of the Night complete with full-on emotional abandon and great technical precision as well as awesome musicianship, and she was able to be a consistent performer from beginning to end. And I would love to hear Diana Schnürpel in a lot more grand roles such as Marguerite de Valois, Anna Bolena, Elisabetta from Roberto Devereux, Beatrice di Tenda, Alaide from La Straniera, Amalia from I Masnadieri, Leonora from I Trovatore, Odabella from Attila, Elena from I Vespri Siciliani, Lucrezia Contarini from I Due Foscari, Giselda from I Lombardi, and maybe even Mimi from La Bohème, Antonia from Le Comte d'Hoffmann, Cho-Cho-san from Madame Butterfly, as well as Esclarmonde from Massenet's Esclarmonde, and Sita from Massenet's Le Roi de Lahore. The possibilities for Madame Schnürpel are absolutely endless, and she had the precise technique and pure discipline to make everything work exceptionally well. So I salute Diana Schnürpel and all of her efforts for making the Queen of the Night a beautifully musical character and an absolutely memorable character to witness from beginning to end. Suwa-jo did have the correct lyric soprano sound for Pamina. It was sufficiently creamy, yet also had that nice silvery edge to it. She also looked the part, young and fresh and absolutely lovely like a daisy. But more than anything, her vocal assets as Pamina found in her lovely lyric soprano voice that had that shimmer and that sparkle, as well as that sheen added onto it, especially a silvery sheen in her voice, managed to make her vocal performance as Pamina stand out superbly well, especially where she stands head to toe with my personal favorite Paminas, although they were a lot more vocally proficient in that role, such as Annalisa Rothenberger, René Doria, Anna Moffo, Edith Mathis, Valerie Masterson, Lucina Mara, Melita Museli, Judith Raskin, Ruth Margret Pütz, Ileana Kotrubash, Margaret Price, Faye Robinson, Gail Robinson, and Ruth Ann Swenson, because they had naturally creamy voices as well as good coloratura technique to make their portrayals of Pamina stand out superbly, especially where my number one favorites such as Anna Moffo and Valerie Masterson managed to stand out among the crowd, all thanks to their beautiful voices, as well as crystalline techniques that made their performances as Pamina stand out superbly. Nevertheless, Suwa-jo did have a lot of great things going for her. However, what was working against her favor was the occasional pitchiness, those moments where she was quite vocally inconsistent. But those are small dents to pay for what was otherwise a thoroughly committed performance from this lyric soprano with a brilliant future ahead of her and an equally brilliant repertoire, from the light and breezy Norina to the more florid and delicate Juliette, all the way up to Mimi and Countess Almaviva. There's a great future for Suwa-jo in roles such as Melisande, Louise, Manon, Mignon, Magda de Chivry, Anna from Le Villi, and Zdenka from Arabella. And maybe if she has a lot more top notes, I could even see her in roles such as Violetta from La Traviata, Lucia from Lucia de la Mermur, Leila from Le Pêcheur de Perles, and even Berthe from Le Prophète. The possibilities for Miss Jo are absolutely endless, and she definitely proved herself and earned her stripes as a fine lyric soprano with a nice florid technique, capable also of singing good coloratura in Pamina. She was able to master this role quite well. Even with some of those vocal setbacks, she managed to march forward and give the goods. And speaking of giving the goods, Michot Marrero continued to be as consistent as a wonderful and charismatic performer as Papagena. And she has been owning this role for many years, and she continues to find a lot of exciting nuances and a lot of fun with this wonderful character. And it's also reflected in her trademark silvery and gorgeous light soprano / light lyric soprano voice that was able to shine and shimmer and just burst with beauty and loveliness. She owned Papagena with everything she's got, and she was a thoroughly charismatic performer in everything that she managed to accomplish, with A+ all around. Florina Stucki's gorgeous lyric soprano voice as the First Lady, Irene Roberts' sharp yet piercing mezzo-soprano voice as the Second Lady, and Lauren Decker's creamy and imposing mezzo-soprano / contralto voice as the Third Lady managed to blend in such a heavenly manner, and these three singers of the three ladies managed to steal the show so well thanks to their cooperation, coordination, and what they were able to accomplish as fine singing actresses all around. The soloist of the Deutsche Oper Berlin's children's chorus managed to sing the roles of the three boys in such a heavenly manner and do so with charm, ease, elegance, and loveliness. And I also salute them for their fine musical efforts. Chance-Jonas O'Toole was still reliable in terms of singing the first armed man, and even though I still find his voice to be a bit too light for the first armed man, as I do prefer a stronger spinto tenor voice in the likes of Herbert Schachschneider, Helmut Melchert, and James King, I still have to salute Chance-Jonas O'Toole for his fine musicianship and his overall vocal strength for making the first armed man come to life. And I also would like to hear him as Tamino or even one of the priests, because he is way more suitable for those roles, but nevertheless, he was able to deliver a vocally stirring performance as the first armed man. Philip Yekal grew a lot stronger as Papageno in terms of his voice being a lot more present, but what was always consistent about Philip Yekal as Papageno was his charisma, charm, sense of humor, and how he was able to combine some of the boorish aspects of Papageno with a lot more lovability, likability, and approachability to make him a fully fledged out character, thus making me want to root for him, and he just makes me want to throw a huge grin at him every time he was on stage. Sure, I'm still kind of missing that extra meatiness and that extra depth found in baritones such as Giuseppe Taddei, Erich Kunz, Hermann Prey, and even Vladimiro Ganzarolli, but I totally digress. Philip Yekal was still consistent as a singing actor, and he was able to just win me over as Papageno, all thanks to his fine acting skills and his overall charisma, which he was able to own from beginning to end. Attilio Glaza is certainly no stranger in the role of Tamino. He's been singing this for what feels like a decade, if not more than a decade. And the fact that he was able to not only own this role, all thanks to his charm and his great musicianship, is a mere understatement. He was a thoroughly consistent singer who was able to use that full lyric tenor voice of his that has actually grown in size and grown in a bit more of a baritonal depth to make Tamino a hero that is worth rooting for. He was able to just win me over as Tamino, even though his voice did grow in a little bit more roughness and a little bit more edge due to singing a lot more spinto-y roles like Don José from Carmen and the title role of Wagner's Lohengrin, and I dare not forget about his recent effort singing Gabriele Adorno from Verdi's Simon Boccanegra. Nevertheless, the musicianship is still there, his musicality is still there, and that lovely full lyric tenor timbre that he has been always well known for is still there, if not gaining more in richness and more of a baritonal timbre, thus making him stand out superbly. And even though I do miss the more full-sounding and way more musical voices found in Koloman von Pataki, Richard Taube, Walter Ludwig, Peter Anders, Anton der Mota, Ernst Häfliger, Nikolai Gedda, and my number one favorite of all time, Fritz Wunderlich, he was still able to own the role of Tamino with everything he's got. Even though his clarity has been kind of compromised these days, there's still that semblance of vocal clarity that managed to stay consistent in Attilio Glaza's voice and that managed to make him win over the audience with his charm and that virility that he has been gaining throughout the years as a full lyric tenor, especially when he's been taking on heavier roles, but still being as consistent as a musician that he's always been. Therefore, A+ for Attilio Glaza all around for a wonderful performance as Tamino. Jörg Schürner was able to continue to produce pure tones as the second priest, and he also had fine acting chops to boot, thus making him an equally strong performer in this role. Paul Kaufmann used his fine character tenor voice to own the role of Monostatos, a role that he's been singing for many years and a role that he continues to own with vocal awesomeness thanks to his character tenor voice, as well as how he was able to accomplish the overall nuances as a singing actor. There were occasions where he can find some tenderness with this character, and also moments where he can just go all out with rage and with vengeance, thus making Paul Kaufmann a superb singing actor as Monostatos. And I definitely salute him with everything that he accomplished tonight as this Moorish character and everything that he was able to sing using that fine character tenor voice of his to just win this role over. I was just as excited to see Patrick Getty as Sarastro, considering that he has been singing this role for a good number of years as well. And my goodness, did he just floor me over in the best way possible with that dark, round, rich, cavernous, and absolutely voluminous basso profondo voice of his. It was just amazing hearing this basso profondo give the goods, and give the goods in terms of not only his voice, mind you, but also his tall, handsome, and virile stage presence that made me thoroughly excited and thoroughly elated to see Mr. Getty give the goods as this high priest. His low notes were just as rich and cavernous and dark, which is what you want in any true basso profondo singing sarastro. The only attributes working against Patrick Getty are throatiness, which has been kind of marring his vocal performance, and at times lacking in a lot more color and charisma, because whenever I think of bassi profondi singing sarastro, who also have just as much color, just as much vocal beauty, and a lot of nobility, my ears turn toward the likes of Michael Langdon, Arnold van Mill, Jerome Hines, and Cesare Siepi. And if we're looking at older singers of the past, I dare not forget about Ludwig Weber, Ezio Pinza, and Alexander Kipnis. And lest I forget about Ivar Andersen and Ludwig Hofmann. Those were real bassi profondi that had not only deep voices, but also a lot more colors and overtones to their voices. With Patrick Getty, I'm sure that if he can get over his throatiness and give into a lot more squealos singing, as well as just getting rid of what's ever holding him back, I am sure that he will be able to be a more complete package as a true basso profondo. And as he was as Sarastro, even with the throatiness holding him back, even with those moments where he could have used a lot more clarity in his voice, his dark, rich, and cavernous timbre more than overcompensated those flaws and therefore continued to just be an absolute asset to Mr. Getty as a tall, handsome, and noble singing actor as Sarastro. Christian Simmons did grow in depth and richness as the second arm man, all thanks to his bass baritone / basso cantante voice that actually does have a lot of potential to grow as a basso cantante. Yes, it's not as deep as my personal favorite second arm man of all time, Martti Talvela, all thanks to his signature depth and signature roundness to the point where he did win me over as the second arm man, but I totally digress. Christian Simmons was still a superb musician, and he was able to totally own the role of the second arm man with great musicianship and a great amount of virility to own that role. Graduating from the first priest to the speaker of the temple was Porrick Rowan, and my goodness did his voice grow in clarity and sheen and virility to the point where I am just so proud of how he developed. He is just so thrilling in that particular role, all thanks to that bass baritone voice of his being put to exceptional use and equally great musicianship to the point where I was totally floored in the best possible way with his performance as the speaker of the temple. Yes, even though I could never forget about Hans Hotta in that particular role, all thanks to his vocal clarity in his prime, let alone George London and his sense of virility, I can never ever diminish the talent and the charm as well as the virility that Porrick Rowan owned as the speaker of the temple, all thanks to his superb vocal growth and how he was able to grow in vocal virility as a bass baritone with the world at his fingertips and a great repertoire to keep on tackling and a huge array of roles, especially roles for a true bass baritone, let alone a basso cantante, that he can accept with open arms. Kyle Miller showed nobility and virility as the first priest, and it was thanks to his sturdy baritone voice that he was able to make a fine impression as the first priest, and he was also able to be just as tall, handsome, and dashing in that particular role. Yes, there could be a little bit more depth found in bassos, let alone bass baritones like Manfred Röhl in that particular role, but I totally digress. Kyle Miller's tall and handsome stage presence and his sufficiently dashing baritone voice managed to be a strong impression on the first priest. And I would also like to hear him as Papageno one day because he does have a fine voice for that particular role. So overall, the singing was quite good all around. Stealing the show among the women performers was none other than Biana Schnürpel as the Queen of the Night, all thanks to her technical prowess and absolute precision in that role and the promise that she continues to have as a lyric coloratura who can also be able to do dramatic coloratura soprano roles with pure abandon and pure charm, and let's also not forget keen musicianship. And those were her great strengths for the evening. Among the men, I still have to give a lot of kudos to Patrick Getty and his vocal strength and tall and handsome stage presence for owning the role of Sarastro. And I dare not forget about the exceptional vocal talents of Sua Jo, Michot Marrero, Florina Stucchi, Irene Roberts, Lauren Decker, the members of the children's chorus of the Deutsche Oper Berlin, Chance-Jonas O'Toole, Philipp Jekal, Attilio Glaser, Jörg Schörner, Paul Kaufmann, Christian Simmons, Porrick Rowan, and Kyle Miller. Everybody managed to give it their all tonight, especially where Philipp Jekal and Attilio Glaser's fine chemistry as Papageno and Tamino was concerned, and let's also not forget about Sua Jo's vocal beauty as Pamina and Michot Marrero just having a ball as Papagena. Everybody managed to give it their all tonight, and I salute each and every one of them for doing such superb jobs. Even with some attributes working against a good number of singers, they were still able to show strength, commitment, and an overall dedication to their craft, which is something that I will continue to applaud them for, even when the curtains were down. And the conducting done by Dominic Limburg, yes, it was still quite speedy, and yes, it could have still used a lot more nuance in certain passages, but it was still exciting. I could see why the audience were particularly keen on his conducting. It's exciting. It managed to keep everybody's interest up, and he was able to imbue some of the moments with a fair amount of charisma and a lot of emotional investment, especially when he was able to involve the members of the orchestra and the chorus to make sure that they give it their all. And what more can you expect from the chorus and orchestra of the Deutsche Oper Berlin? Everybody was as reliable as always, and everybody managed to do a fine job with everything that they've got. So overall, with Diana Schnürpel heading the helm as the Queen of the Night, all thanks to her technical prowess and her skills as a fine musician, she was able to own tonight's performance of the Zauberflöte and manage to steal the show from everybody's feet. She made a strong first impression on me as the Queen of the Night, which is a role that she has been singing for many years, and I do wish the best for her future, especially in more challenging dramatic coloratura soprano roles, because I am confident that she can own them just as much as she has owned the Queen of the Night. Equally just as strong were Patrick Getty's strong Zarastro, Philip Yekal's charismatic Papageno, Attilio Glaza singing a beautiful storm and a beautiful, wonderful array of tones as Tamino, Suajo's silvery crystalline tone used finely as Pamina, and Micho Marero's charismatic and charming, silvery, light lyric soprano voice being put to exceptional use as Papagena. They managed to also join Diana Schnürpel in owning their roles and, of course, winning me over as the viewer and the listener. And for those of you who caught this performance of Mozart's Die Zauberflöte at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, what did you think of it? Did you feel that Diana Schnürpel owned the role of the Queen of the Night with technical prowess and a whole lot of great musicianship? Did you feel like she was able to be up to the task of the Queen of the Night? Was there another singer who stole her thunder, whether it be from Suajo, Micho Marrero, Patrick Getty, Philip Yekal, or Attilio Glaza? Or did you feel like the entire performance of Diana Schnürpel was not really to your liking? Please comment below and let me know. Well, that's it for my review of Mozart's Die Zauberflöte starring Diana Schnürpel as the Queen of the Night. Tune in tomorrow for my review of Verdi's Rigoletto starring Julia Musichenko as Gilda, also at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. So until then, good night everybody and happy holidays!